Okay, why beans are so important. The intrahepatic recirculation pattern. I gotta see what my slide is. Okay, I should go back so that you can look at these big, long, fancy words. Beans, beans, the magical fruit. The more you eat, the more you toot. The more you toot, the better you feel. So eat some beans at every meal. It's true. All right, and we're going to talk about the tooting a little bit. Not right now. I'm getting into that. I save all that and fun stuff to the end, you know. Ha, that was not meant to be a pun. Okay, now, you didn't even catch it. Ha, ha, ha. Okay, now then, the marriage between bile and beans. I need to let you know about what occurs when we make a digestive fluid called bile. Bile is made in the liver. Bile is a digestive enzyme. It is a fluid. By the way, it's green. If you've ever been morning sick, ladies, and you, oh, maybe I should, it's too much information, but anyway, you throw it up, it's green. Okay, bile. Bile is the liver's trash truck for all of the fat-soluble waste that the liver is cleaning out of your bloodstream. Now, you always think about the liver making the digestive enzyme bile to digest the fatty acids that you're eating. It does. It does digest the fatty acids that you're eating. But that is only one of the minor things that it does. The major work of bile is to carry out all the fat-soluble waste. And most people think fat-soluble waste are things like, the herbicides and pesticides and the chemicals that they use to grow our food. And it's the diesel fumes in the air. And it's the stains on the floor and the carpet outgassing smells. That's the culprit. That's actually just the tiniest bit of the toxins that the liver is clearing out of your bloodstream. Most of the toxins are you. Whenever we metabolize a fuel, we produce waste. And you also have red blood cells that die every 3 months. The cell life of a red blood cell is only 3 months. You have white blood cells that give their life in the line of duty to kill bacteria and fungus and virus that enter the body, and so they die. You have hormones. We're back to hormones, and I'm going to get into this a little bit more later. Hormones, all of those things are cleared by the liver. By the way, so are allergens. All the cat dander, dog dander, horse dander, all the tree pollens, the ragweed, the casein, which is a milk protein that enters into the bloodstream whole. All allergens are also cleared by the liver. And where are they put? Into the digestive fluid bile. Then the bile leaves the liver. By the way, the liver is right underneath your right rib cage. It's a very large organ, one of the largest organs in the body. And it covers over your gallbladder. It's like a hood over the top of the gallbladder. And when you make bile, some of the bile is going to go via what are called biliary ducts. They're just tubes, a fancy word for tubes. Some of the bile, actually the majority of it, will go into your gallbladder. And there in the gallbladder, it is stored until you eat a meal. Something else happens in the bile, in the gallbladder. It is concentrated to 10 times the strength. And then some of your bile will drip directly from your liver into what is known as the duodenum. Remember, that's what most people think it's their stomach. It's just below the sternum, above your belly button. That's the first part of the small colon, or the small intestine. And when the bile eventually arrives in the duodenum, it is there to digest the foods that are coming from the stomach into the duodenum, the fatty acids. And then the bile will move on down into what's called the jejunum, and it moves down further into another part of the small colon called the ileum. And then does a little right-hand turn, and now we're at the bottom or the lower right quadrant of your abdomen, where most people think for their appendix is right there, and it is, your appendix is there. And right at the end of the terminal ileum, the last part of the small colon, something very significant happens. It is from there that we absorb fats. We don't absorb fats in the stomach. We don't absorb fats in the duodenum or the jejunum. We don't absorb fats, certainly in the large colon. Nothing is absorbed in the large colon except for water. We absorb fats from the terminal part of the ileum. And bile is a fat. Bile, when it's made by the liver, is made out of triglycerides. I hope you guys remember triglycerides from the first part of this lecture. Bile is made out of triglycerides. Triglycerides are those sugars that were converted by insulin into fat, which you store upon you as adipose tissue. And I had somebody come up in between here, between the sessions, and ask me a question about cholesterol. Did you know that your cholesterol, your high cholesterol levels are caused by triglycerides? Not by eggs, not by bacon, not by McDonald's hamburgers, but by eating too many carbohydrates, too many sweets. We convert the sugars into a triglyceride. An LDL molecule, that is a low-density lipoprotein molecule, is a triglyceride core with an apolipoprotein shell, which is the type of protein. It doesn't matter what the shell is. It's a triglyceride. And it comes from us eating sugars. Look up the Framingham Heart Study. Look up the Boston Irish Study. Wonderful studies that are actually done on human beings, not rats. And you'll see that the conclusion of these studies are like, whoa, we thought that the cholesterol raises blood cholesterol, and I understand that. It's straight line logic. You eat cholesterol, it goes into your bloodstream, and it turns into cholesterol. Actually, we go into a process of breaking it down through chylomicrons in mice cells, and we use that cholesterol to make cells. The cholesterol that we eat is not turning into cholesterol in your bloodstream. It's actually being used to make cells and do all kinds of functions. No, it's the sugars that we eat. And too much pasta and too many potatoes and too much bread. Potatoes and pasta and bread are okay in limited quantities, but we overeat them. And so they turn to triglyceride, and that raises our cholesterol. All right, so what happens to all these triglycerides? The liver grabs them out of the portal vein. It's a huge vein going running right through the liver, and says, come to me, little triglycerides. Gathers up the triglycerides, converts them into the digestive fluid bile, sends the bile via the gallbladder or drips directly down the common biliary duct. Anyway, it all arrives in the duodenum. Digests food there. By the way, remember, it's a trash truck. It's carrying all your allergens, hormonal products. Every fat-soluble piece of waste that you have is in the bile. And it goes into the GI tract, the gastrointestinal tract, arrives at the terminal part of the ileum, and we absorb fats there. Bile is a fat. 90 to 95% of your bile is absorbed at the terminal part of the ileum. And your bile returns to the liver. And the liver says to the returning bile, what are you doing back here? I sent you down to the gallbladder and the gastrointestinal tract about 4 hours ago. You're supposed to go out into the toilet in the form of a bowel movement. But you're back. And the bile says, hey, not my fault. I'm a fatty acid. You know, fatty acids absorb at the terminal part of the ileum. Hi, I'm back. Liver goes, oh no. Now I have the bile back, and bile, you returned with all of the toxins that I stuffed into you before I sent you down to the gastrointestinal tract. Well, while you were monkeying around in the gastrointestinal tract, I didn't just sit here twiddling my thumbs. I've been filtering this girl's blood, and I have collected 4 hours of trash. Now, what am I going to do with the 4 hours of trash that I just collected? I have the returning bile, which brought back all of its trash with it. When the bile returns, it returns with its trash in tow. So the liver says, well, guess all I have to do, okay, stomp it down, push it together. We will take the returning bile. I don't have to make new bile because I have the old stuff back, and I will take the new 4 hours of toxic waste that I've gathered. I will put that into the old bile. Now you got doubly toxic bile. Let's send that down to the gastrointestinal tract, and this time bile go out. Don't come back. Bile's out of control, though. Bile has to do whatever he's not in control of the situation. He gets down to the terminal part of the ileum, and he returns to the liver, and the liver goes, oh no, you're back again. So the liver takes 4 more hours of these circulating toxins. These are your hormonal products. These are all the allergens, all the waste. And we put even more into your bile. Do you see, as the bile continues to recycle over and over and over again, that your bile gets so foul and so nasty and so acidic, because it turns acidic, it's like General Sherman marching through the South. Now, for those who don't know your Civil War history, General Sherman was a Union general who burned a path to the South. He burned the whole city of Atlanta. I'm still upset about that. Now, if you've ever been down south, you have to understand, my mother's sitting up here tonight. She's from the South. And so I was raised in Texas for a while. But we're still upset about the war of northern aggression. So, General Sherman's not a happy fellow in the Southerner's mind. General Sherman burned his way through the South. Now then, your bile is like General Sherman. I call it General Sherman bile. It is so acidic because you need to understand the things that the liver is clearing are amino acids, listen to the word acids, fatty acids, hormones which are made out of fatty acids, All of the pesticides, herbicides, and a small percentage of stuff that we have to clear from the liver are made out of acids. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out, that when you take all those acids, and by the way, you put it into a triglyceride-made substance, which is a fatty acid, you add acid plus acid plus acid, and you get what? Yeah, lots of acid. Triple acid, quadruple acid, and it goes on into the scientific notation. So you are making the acidity of your bile so low, and I don't even call it low. You make it so acidic. When you say low, because if you know about chemistry, the lower you go on the pH scale, the more acidic something is. But let's just put it this way. The more acidic your bile is, so then you got this burning bile that comes where? Into your duodenum. I know some people out there are relating, because they say, right, I'm trying to stand on my tiptoes, you can see my duodenum, that you are relating, because this is where a lot of your pain starts. Now, this bile can go down, and it can burn its way through, make Crohn's disease, get into the large colon, because 5 to 10% of it will escape into the large colon. And then it'll burn a hole through the large colon. We call it ulcerative colitis. You can have all kinds of problems that way, and it can backwash up into the esophagus. The anatomy and physiology of the human body is such that the duodenum, which is right here, is connected to your stomach through what's called the pyloric sphincter. And right there where they're connected, they're straight. Quickly, the duodenum takes a down turn, but the bile is released into the straight portion. And where my fingers come together, that's where the pyloric sphincter is. The pyloric sphincter will open, and some of the food that you have consumed will pass into the duodenum, where most digestion takes place. And some of the bile that is pooled in the duodenum will backwash into the stomach. And the pyloric sphincter closes. Snap close. You understand that when something closes, it creates a back pressure. You know, if you have the windows open, we've been opening our windows lately, and if you open the back door, did you notice how the front door will pop open? This is exactly the same type of thing, or that's why we have P-traps and plumbing, and it's because of these back pressure problems. And so when the bile enters the stomach and the pyloric sphincter goes snap closed, then we push the bile up through the stomach, through what's another sphincter called the lower esophageal sphincter, and up into your esophagus, and it burns. And we call that heartburn, acid reflux. By the way, it can go all the way up into your throat and cause you to have what I call the GERD voice. GERD is an acronym for gastroesophageal reflux disease. And you have the GERD voice, and that's a gravelly sounding voice. You can't sing anymore. You got this always clearing your throat stuff. It comes up, a small percentage of it comes up even to your mouth, and you have the burning tongue. You have the sores on the side of your tongue. You have the geographic tongue. You got this white pattern, and this coated tongue. That's all bile. That's all bile. That is foul and nasty. Everybody has regurgitation. I do too. That is just the way the anatomy of the human body. But if your bile isn't general Sherman bile, it's just regular mild bile, then you won't have any of those problems. We take care of gastrointestinal problems that way. Now, what we got to figure out is, if the bile always recycles, and this is just the way the human body is set up, 90 to 95% of bile is recycling, then what's the answer? How do we get the bile to leave the body? You have to put in a bile sequestrant. A bile sequestrant is something that will not allow the bile to absorb at the terminal part of the ileum. And that's where soluble fiber comes in. Soluble fiber is very, very attracted to bile. And bile is very attracted to soluble fiber. Now, I'm going to stop here and tell you where we find soluble fiber. Soluble fiber is found in basically it's found in several little things, but there are three main things that you're going to think about. One, fruits and vegetables. There is 1/2 of 1 gram of soluble fiber in 1 cup of fruits and vegetables. And everybody needs about 15 grams of soluble fiber a day just for normal good health. If you have some type of gastrointestinal problem, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, IBS is a inflammatory bowel syndrome, or you have GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease, you need more than 15 grams a day. But if you were going to do 15 grams a day, and we were going to do that in fruits and vegetables, please do the math on that. How many cups of fruits and vegetables are you going to do a day if you only get a 1/2 gram? 30! Yes! That is a lot of cups of fruit. You're not going to be able to eat 30. It's not going to happen. Okay, so what's another source? Hey, oatmeal. Because we all see on the commercials that oatmeal is good for your heart healthy. It's got 2 grams of soluble fiber per cup. Well, if I need 15, how many cups of oatmeal do you have to eat a day? 7.5, yes, 7.5. Okay, well, you know, you're a little sick on the oatmeal. So where do we get soluble fiber? From legumes. Legumes or beans. Pinto beans, navy beans, garbanzo beans, black beans, brown beans, red beans, white beans. You're going to make a song. I'm going to do that someday. Anyway, all right, split peas, yellow split peas, green split peas. Anyway, all of these legumes, we call them soup beans. They are full of soluble fiber. Depending on the type, if you get the black-eyed peas, which are the highest in soluble fiber, we will run anywhere from 6 to 8 grams of soluble fiber in 1 cup of cooked legumes. It's like, what is the better source? I mean, we could eat 1.5 cups of beans a day, and we're there. We're there. We're at what we need it to be. And so now you know where you get soluble fiber. Now, the marriage between bile and beans. Bile. No, let's put beans over here because I want to come from this side because this is where my stomach is. Entering into the duodenum is your beans that you've just eaten, soluble fiber. Coming down from the liver, being dripped into the duodenum is your bile. And they see each other from across a crowded duodenum. And they rush into each other's arms. And they get married. And there is no such word as divorce. Now, this is called the covalent bonding in chemistry. Those who are chemists out here, you'll know the difference between ionic bonding and covalent bonding. A covalent bond is very difficult to break. And so they're not going to break. And bile does not make covalent bondings with many things, very few things. It makes mostly ionic bonds, which are temporary bonds. This is a marriage, and there is no such word as divorce. And the bile and the beans travel happily through the jejunum and into the ileum, and they reach the terminal part of the ileum, and the bile says to his newlywed wife, the beans, hey, I'm going to take you back to the liver for our honeymoon because this is what I've been doing for the past however old you are, 34 years, 54 years, 64 years. And then the beans say, uh-oh, I forgot to tell you this before we got married up there in the duodenum. You know how your prospective spouse may leave some information out? Well, I left this out. I can't cross the intestinal barrier. Not here, not anywhere. Buddy, I'm going out into the toilet, and you're coming with me because we are married, and there's no such word as divorce. Now, that's a marriage really going down the drain, isn't it? Okay. We throw the blasted, burning bile, how you like that alliteration, the blasted, burning bile into the toilet in the form of bile movement. It goes away. And the liver goes, yes, I didn't get any returning bile. I get to make brand new bile. Come to me, little triglycerides. And it will pull the triglycerides out of the portal vein, this huge vein going through the liver, and it will turn it into brand new bile. And it will take the toxins that it's gathered in the last 4 hours, plus the stored toxins. Because your liver, a long time ago, if you have not been eating legumes, you have gone over the top. You can only put so much toxic waste into a substance. You reach what's called a saturation point, where you can't cram anything else into it. And so then your liver will store all of this fat-soluble waste in the liver. That's what a fatty liver is about. That's what lipomas are about, if you know what lipomas are. Some of you will have lipomas out there. They're little fatty tissue. They're not tumors. They're just little blobs of fat on your arm, on your forehead, on your foot. It can be anywhere. Those are lipomas. Those are little landfills. They're little trash heaps. The liver didn't have a place to store all that fatty waste, so it just makes a spot. Hey, right on the top of her foot, boom, lipoma. Get them on the back, wherever. They're not cancers, they're just fatty waste that we didn't have any place to store. And so then the liver will take the new stuff that's cleared out of the bloodstream, put it in the new bile, and then it will take some of the old stuff, and you can only take a small amount because it's going to take a while to clear out all this years and years of stored waste, put it into the bile, send the bile to the gastrointestinal tract, we introduce the soluble fiber again, we throw that away. And this is what it means when we stop this intrahepatic recirculation pattern. It's just a fancy word for this recycling of bile. That's why beans are so important. If you don't eat beans, then you're going to have problems. 1, gastrointestinal problems, which I think you can see why, because of the burning bile. 2, I wanted to talk to you about setting the timing chain. So many of our problems, I told you at the beginning of this lecture, we start at the very beginning, it's the neurotransmitters, it's the central nervous system because the brain is in control of everything. But if I had to pick a second system that is having more impact on your health than anything else, it's the endocrine system. And that is where you make hormones. Hormones, they set the timing of everything. If you do not have a right hormonal balance, you are not going to feel well. Everything will be wrong. You'll have thyroid problems. You'll have prostate problems. You'll have ovarian problems. You'll have menstruation problems. You will have blood sugar problems. You will not sleep well. You will not feel well. You won't have that sense of well-being. You will have depression. You will have anxiety. You will have essential tremors. We have all kinds of things going on because the timing of your engine is set with hormones. Now, I said this a few minutes ago. I said that the liver clears out a lot of fat-soluble waste. And I said that hormones are made out of fats. When you make a hormone, you don't just make it and it's just, oh, you made the hormone and it stays in the body for the rest of your life. No. It's cleared by the liver. And the liver puts the hormones in the bile. But if you were recycling your bile, then all the hormones, 90 to 95% of those hormones re-enter your bloodstream to do another job. Example, estrogen. Women make estrogen. By the way, men, you make estrogen too, a very small amount in your adrenal glands. The adrenals make more than adrenaline. They make a lot of hormones. But estrogen, actually it's good for you to hear this because then you'll understand prostate problems too. Estrogen is made, and estrogen always causes growth. Growth of female tissue. You'll grow fibroids, you'll grow cysts, you'll have fibrocystic breast disease, you will have cancer. And that's because we have too much hormone. Why do we have too much hormone? Because every single moment, except for a very brief time on day one of a menstrual cycle, we make estrogen. So we make all this estrogen, and then we throw the estrogen. It's to stimulate cell growth. It actually triggers what are known as receptor sites. And then we cause this growth. But you're not supposed to keep growing things. There's supposed to be a stop. But the problem is if you are recycling your estrogen and you make estrogen every single day, then the estrogen levels build and build and build and build. And this happens in men too. By the way, I need to let you guys know this. Adipose tissue secretes estrogen. Remember what adipose tissue is? Fat cells. Fat cells secrete estrogen. And it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. If you are overweight, you are making estrogen just because of your fat cells. And so then you recycle all of that estrogen, and it keeps recycling. You add more and more estrogen to it. Then you get a point in the men where your prostate gland has to grow so you can counteract that foul estrogen, because that's supposed to be a woman's hormone, not a man's hormone. And so the prostate has to grow so that it can make more male hormones, and then it gets bigger and bigger, and you have all these problems with prostate. It's like, what are we doing? We're not throwing away the hormones. And then, of course, we're stomping on the gas pedal by eating all the sugars, which turn into triglycerides, which become little mini hormone factories and make estrogen. It's like, oh, could we stop this craziness? It's so easy. It's so easy. You say, well, you think it's easy, Karen. You're not eating sugar. I'm not eating sugar and haven't for years. You can get off of it. It is addictive, but you can get off of it. Just draw a line in the sand and don't step across it. It's possible. Very possible. Okay, so we're back to the recycling of these hormones. As the recycling of the hormones go on, we don't have just a problem with growth of extra tissue with estrogen, but what about adrenaline? Did you know you're recycling your adrenaline? And if you've been stomping on the gas pedal, you refuse to have a governor, and so you're making tons and tons and tons of adrenaline. The adrenaline recycles and recycles and recycles. And what will adrenaline do when it continues to recycle and you mount the levels of adrenaline? Adrenaline is a neurotransmitter. Remember how I taught you it's the king and queen? Epinephrine, norepinephrine, that's what adrenaline is. Then you increase your neurotransmitter activity, goes faster and faster and faster, and then you're always on the anxious side. You're the nervous Nelly. You're just always ready to fall apart at the seams. Everything is driving you insane. And then you get to the point where you have panic attacks. And I will tell you, for those who have not had a panic attack, they are not funny at all. And they are real. And you'll look at a person and say, oh, just get over it. A panic attack is probably the most frightening thing you could ever go through in your life. It would be easier to deal with cancer than it is with the panic attack. You feel like you are literally insane, and you don't know what to do, and you are totally out of control. At least with cancer, you have some control. With a panic attack, you feel like you have no control. You're at the mercy of whatever is taking you down. That's too much adrenaline. Why do you have so much adrenaline? Because you're recycling it, because you don't throw it away. And then you stomp on the gas pedal, you took away the governor. So all of these factors become important. What happens if you have too much thyroid hormone and we're not getting rid of the thyroxine? Then you have Graves' disease or hyperthyroidism. Now you have to take propylthiouracil, or you have to have radioactive iodine done, or they take out your thyroid gland. What happens if you make too much melatonin? What happens if these are other hormones. What happens if you make too much insulin? Let's go to insulin. If you make too much insulin, then your blood sugar is always falling down low, because what does insulin do? It takes the sugar in your bloodstream, even if it's not high, even if there's just a little bit of sugar in the bloodstream, converts into a fat. But if you don't have enough sugar in the bloodstream, then you can't make the neurotransmitters, so you're back to the Mr. Hyde behavior, and you can't think, and your mind is like in a cloud. And so we don't have enough sugar because we had too much insulin. Why did you have too much insulin? Because we're recycling it. We keep bringing down our blood sugars. And what does that make you do when your sugar is low? When your sugar is low, you crave sugar. It's like, I got to bring up my sugar, so you're dying. I mean, it's not just a passing whim, I'd like to have a donut. It's, I have to have a donut. Chocolate. Something. Because we're trying to bring the blood sugar up. And because it's coming down, because we have such high levels of insulin. It's like, oh, could we just clear it all out? Could we just get rid of it? And so that's what we have to do by the eating of the beans. Now, did you read the slide? I hear this question. This is not the most common question, but it's almost the most common question I get. Karen, can't eat beans. They cause gas. Well, I want to tell you about a client. He lives in Canada. And he called me because his only problem was flatulence. Don't you like that? Flatulence. That is a fancy word for gas, okay? And he said, and it's bad. For those who have gas, you know it can be very, very painful. If it's up here, it's very painful. It doesn't matter where it is. It can be very painful. Some of it's not, a lot of it's not, but a lot of it is. And he was missing 2 to 3 days a week of work. And so he called because he had heard about me, and he said, I need you to help me get rid of gas. Now, you can imagine him on the telephone. If I said the first thing off, oh, sir, well, all you have to do is eat beans, do you know what he would have done? Click. So I spend almost 45 minutes teaching him about this marriage between the beans and the bile, and go through all that, so that when I get to the bottom line to say to get rid of your gas, you're going to eat beans, he won't hang up. So I got to the bottom line and said, you're going to have to eat beans. And he said, what? Eat beans? I haven't touched a bean in 10 years. Beans cause gas. I drink water. Hold it. And so I said, riddle me this, Batman. Okay, guys, when was I born, if I'm using that type of expression? Quiz time. Riddle me this, Batman. When was I watching that show? 19 late 60s, early 70s. Yeah, but basically the 60s. Yes, riddle me this, Batman. If you don't eat beans, and you haven't eaten one for 10 years, and you don't touch them with a 10-foot pole, and why did you call me today? Oh, you have gas, that's right. And beans cause gas, but you haven't eaten beans, then what in the world's causing your gas? And so then he said, okay, I'm listening. What causes gas is the fermentation of a fancy word called oligosaccharides. Oligosaccharides. Bile is responsible for digesting foods, but the more and more acidic it becomes, this is the general Sherman bile, then instead of digesting, it ferments these sugars. A saccharide is a sugar. And you will ferment. You know that. By the way, we do not ferment proteins. Have you ever noticed that? Leave a piece of meat out. It doesn't put off gas. It does put off a very putrid smell. But it doesn't put off these big... Have you ever had like tomato sauce that you've left in the refrigerator? You know, it got way back at the bottom in the lower right-hand corner, you know, and there's a lid on it, and it's been in there for months and months, and you notice the lid gets a little puff, and eventually it'll blow off. Well, that's because it is a carbohydrate. It's a sugar. And sugars always cause, or are always the things that are fermented. And bile will ferment sugars if it is on the acidic side. Now, bile is always acid, but if it's really acidic, if it's General Sherman bile. And so it's the bile that causes gas. And then when you have these type of sugars, these saccharides are broken down into monosaccharides, but then they are more easily fermented. Broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, they're the same type of complex sugars. And so it's the bile that creates the gas. Now, beans take away gas. Why? Whoops. I thought I had another slide that said I had some nice alliteration going on another slide. Was that one? And I missed it? Yeah, I did. I missed it at the top. Hey, check out this alliteration. Bile makes a beeline for beans. You like that? Yeah. And then this other fancy, all gobbledygook language is what that means. Bile makes a beeline for beans, yeah. Because of this attraction between the soluble fiber in the legumes, the beans, and the bile, remember how they got married up there in the duodenum? Because the beans have these type of saccharides, these type of sugars, are a very complex sugar, then the bile will ferment those beans. Do you see there are certain foods that are more easily fermented? The beans are one of those foods, so that's why the beans get the blame. But it's not the beans' fault, it's the bile's fault. So how in the world are you going to fix the problem? You got to throw away the acidic bile. You got to get General Sherman to leave. So how are we going to do that? You got to eat beans because it has a soluble fiber to get to leave. And that's why we have so many problems, because we avoid the beans because we say beans cause gas. I'm not going to eat it, but beans are the only thing that are going to get rid of the acidic bile. So start slowly on your beans if you like, or just move, into a house by yourself for a few weeks until we get past this point. Eventually, we will get rid of all of this acidic bile. Then the acidity changes, and it's always an acid, but it's not as acidic. And then it will not ferment these complex sugars, and then we don't have gas. Those of you that have worked with me and are eating the legumes, you will know as you continue to eat the legumes, your gas goes away, and then you can eat lots and lots and lots of beans, and you never have any gas at all. That's because you no longer have General Sherman bile. It's worked. It's worked. Okay, I gotta check the time. Oh, I took my watch off so I could check the time earlier. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to questions and answers. I'm starting a few minutes early because the question and answer sessions that I normally do, they could last for 3 hours all by themselves. And I do want to give you an opportunity. Mark Halverson is always on my case about be quick with all this data. You don't actually ever say that wherever Mark is. He moved. He was over there someplace. But anyway, because you need to have your questions answered. And I will tell you, what I have said to you tonight is I have barely scratched the surface of the things that I want you to know. This is just not enough time. I could teach for 30 years nonstop before we get out all the information. There's so much. And so some questions are going to be very important and burning on your heart tonight to help you. So what I'm going to do is I need where are my staff people? This is Sarah Morgan, by the way, this young lady with the short blonde hair. And she's my associate. She is also a nutritionist, and she's completed or just about to complete the Huntington's course in nutrition and comprehensive nutrition. And I have trained her for months and months. She's good. And this other young lady is my daughter. You can just walk back there, Sarah. Walk back there and take a microphone. And Sarah, Ruth, or Kate. You ever do that with your kids? Kate, Ruth, run through all the names. I have two girls. She is Kate, but I call her Ruth. I call her Ruth Kate. Okay. Anyway, so the other one is my daughter. What I'd like to do now is if you have a question, I'd like you to raise your hand, and then one of these girls will come by you, I'll point, and they'll know where I'm going. And then you'll have to speak in a microphone, because otherwise we can't hear you, and then I'd like to answer your question. So I saw this hand immediately go up. This lady wants to have her question answered. So you pass this over to her. You guys have been a great audience, and this Florian Gardens is beautiful, don't you think? Yes. Yes. They did a nice job with the food, too. And thank you guys very much. All right, here's the question.
My question is about Metamucil. The other day, I need bifocals, but I put them on and I looked at how much I'm supposed to take. I have been taking a tablespoon a day. And I looked at it and I'm only supposed to take a teaspoon. But should I cut that out and just quit the sugars, eat the beans, and I won't need that?
Yeah, if you eat beans, you don't have to have Metamucil. Metamucil, for those who don't know, Metamucil is psyllium husk. Psyllium husk is a plant fiber, and it is 100% soluble fiber. And the soluble fiber is what's making this marriage between the bean, or making the marriage with the bile. So if you say, I hate beans, I just can't stand the texture of beans. By the way, the texture of a bean is what is soluble fiber. Then you could purchase psyllium husk. But Metamucil, I have not found in Eau Claire. I know you can get it on like drugstore.com, and you can get truly plain, but watch the word plain, because like if you go down to the store and you buy plain Metamucil, it's not orange flavored, it's not strawberry flavored, but you turn it around, they've added sucralose to it, which is a sweetener. And you do not want to do the sweeteners. Remember, that's stomping on the gas pedal, and that's trouble. So you can buy psyllium at several places in Eau Claire. It is at Festival Foods in their bulk section, in their natural food section. It's at GNC in the mall. It's at Vitamin World in the mall. It's at Mother Nature's Foods. It's out in Fall Creek at Weaver's. So there's many places. And if you can find a Metamucil that's plain, there's many products that are soluble fiber. They go by Colon Pure, Colon Cleanse. There's lots of names for them. But psyllium husk, if you take 1 or 2 level teaspoons, that is the same as 5 grams. And that's what I'm after. I'm after 5 grams of soluble fiber, by the way, per meal. I didn't tell you guys that. How often should you eat beans? You should eat beans 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, if you want to be in tip-top health. I have this guy up here in the second row laughing now. What is so funny? He's thinking, I don't know about that. It really does work. But that would be perfect if you could get 15 grams of soluble fiber in a day, 5 at each meal. And I want to tell you this other piece of information, that beans bind with all fats. Bile is a fat, remember that. Beans bind with every single solitary fat there is. And so if you have beans with bacon, the fat that's in the bacon will not be absorbed. It will go out into the toilet in the form of a bowel movement. If you have beans with cod liver oil, by the way, cod liver oil is good for you. Don't take beans and cod liver oil together, because if you manage to gag that stuff down and you ate beans with it, it all just went into the toilet, and that stuff needs to be in your bloodstream. So beans and fat always combine. Whatever fat is with a bean is going to be thrown out. Now, to be specific about the 1 tablespoon, 1 tablespoon is 3 teaspoons, so you're only taking a teaspoon more than you would have to. You can certainly take psyllium, or you can eat the beans. Either one of them will do. Okay, now I saw a hand back here. So we have to take the thing over there.
Thank you. While detoxifying, and you do donations for blood as part of the cleansing process and detoxifying through Red Cross, is it recommended to give whole blood, or sometimes they ask for, depending on blood type, a double donation? Do you recommend one versus the other as far as the rejuvenation of cells every, I think it's on a 4-month cycle?
Mm-hmm. And you're saying the one or the other, what? The soluble fiber? Is that what you're talking about?
No, is it best to donate the whole blood, or to do the
plasma
apheresis process?
Yeah.
Is there any drawback to one versus the other?
They both have proteins. When you give blood, you have got to make sure you're eating your proteins. Your blood is made out of protein. And so if you were living on, the cereals, the peanut butter and jelly and spaghetti diet, spaghetti's okay. You just need the meatballs with it. You're going to be really lacking in the protein. So one's not better than the other. You can certainly do them all, because we are going to make the plasma as well as we're going to make the red blood cells. You just have to make sure your protein is adequate. And if you're giving the blood on a regular basis, you need to double your protein intake. So everybody should be eating protein 3 times a day. And by the way, I should tell you the amount of protein that you should eat. You should eat a palm-sized portion. So if you look at your hand and imagine it without the fingers and the thumb, this is your palm. It should be as big as your palm and as thick as your palm. Not mine, because I got a little tiny palm. But this guy, I bet you got a bear paw, don't you? So the bigger your frame, the bigger your palm, and so then that's how much protein you would need. And that is 3 times a day for a if you're giving blood like you are on a regular basis every 4 months, then you would need to eat more. Or there was somebody that came up and talked to me in the break, and he's quite an athlete, and so then those people need more protein. But if you're just a regular old run-of-the-mill person, that is sufficient. Okay, now there was somebody way over here, because I saw her before. The lady in the front row. See, I make you run, Kate. Then I'm coming back to the side. I'm not going to neglect you over here. Do you feel neglected? Oh, you don't look neglected. You guys look great. Okay.
What do you think about protein drinks? You know, it's like a whey, it's a powder, it's like 2 grams of sugar in it, and you add it to milk or water.
It's an excellent question. Protein drinks are usually whey protein or casein, which is milk protein, or they're an egg protein, or they're a soy protein. There's also drinks out there that are rice proteins, but they are really at the bottom of the protein efficiency list. Remember I told you there are only 5 efficient proteins, the eggs, meat, poultry, fish, and seafood. None of the proteins, except the egg protein, will come up to the quality of the efficient proteins that we need. They are still proteins. They will still help you, but there's a difference. There's a difference between living at this level and living at this level. Everybody knows that plays sports, or you can imagine this if you don't. There's something that's called being at the top of your game. Where, you know, you can play a good game, you can play a very good game, but there are games that you can play when you are at the top. You are at the top of your game. My associate, Sarah Morgan, asked me something right before I started, and she said, Karen, are you ready? How do you feel? I said, I'm in my stride. I'm there. I'm at the top of my game. I love this. I love being able to teach you to help you to be better. And so you want to exist. You want to always be at the top of your game. That's where I want to exist all the time. So if you want to be at the top of your game, you're going to have the most efficient proteins. And those 5, the eggs, meat, poultry, fish, seafood, are the ones that will put you at the top of your game. You can do the whey protein, you can do the drinks, and you're going to get some protein, but it will not be as efficient. And so you'll be there, but just not as well as you could be. When you buy protein drinks, if you decide to do that, you have to watch out because they all taste like wallpaper paste. Unless you have some type of sweetener in them. And you've got to understand sweeteners come with all these code words. I mean, it's not just the obvious things like sugar or high fructose corn syrup. I mean, we all can go, oh, well, that's sugar. But there's things that are really tricky. You know, they'll say sucralose, or they will say stevia, or you don't even know what those things are, or they will say sorbitol, or they will say, there's tons of them. Be careful. Let me just put it this way. If it doesn't taste like wallpaper paste, don't buy it. It's full of sugar of one form or another. Okay, and I promise I'm going over here now. I'm not ignoring you guys. Okay, way over here. Okay, we're going to do this. I can only see the dark arm. It's got, next door. Yeah. So I just see little arms.
My question is, what would you recommend for a good natural baby formula if the mother cannot breastfeed? That would be the closest to breast milk.
Yeah, that is a good question. When we get into just the regular baby formulas, they are full of the milk protein, which is casein. And casein is undigestible, period. There is no exceptions. There is always undigestible. And so if we give a baby an undigestible protein and it crosses into the bloodstream, and it will cause them to have all kinds of allergy type reactions. Ear infections is what they'll know, is always a runny nose. So we have to find something that'll work. Well, you can't give a tiny infant meat. Eggs are pretty rough on a child that's below 1 year of age because they are also difficult to digest. So the best is actually your soy. It's not as efficient, but it is the soy protein. And then of course you can say, well, that's the one that's more expensive, the hyperallergenic formula with soy, but that would be the one that I would recommend. All right. Now I'm going to still stay on this side, Okay, this lady right in the front with the light blue shirt on.
What foods would be good to eat? I'm one of the 15% who have cataracts, and I'm under the age of 50. What would be good foods to eat for a person who has cataracts?
Okay, person with cataracts, you need to have the antioxidants. Antioxidants, boy, so much to tell you. Antioxidants are found in your vegetables and your fruits. And I would prefer for you to eat your vegetables. Certainly you can have fruit unless some of you shouldn't have that much sugar. And that's another discussion that I have to have with each one of you to know where you were. But the antioxidants are found in our vegetables, and they are protective for the eyes, and will keep the oxidation procedure actually makes this cloudy lens. And that's what a cataract is your lens becomes very cloudy and you can't see through it. And it's just an oxidation process, so if we could prevent that. So eat your vegetables, eat your vegetables. Okay, now, lady in, right there. Yeah. I'll get back to you way in the back. Just because you sat on the back row. Do you sit on the back row during church too? You know what preachers say about that? Okay, now we're going to the lady that's in the middle. Okay, you're safe now.
Okay, two parts. How do you feel about dairy? What do you tell your clients about dairy? And also, how do you feel about sweet, like pure cane sugar and sucanat and turbinado sugar for alternatives to artificial sweeteners and refined sugar?
Excellent question. I'll answer the latter first before the former. Sucanat, which is just dried cane syrup or cane, it's sugar cane that's been dried up and crushed into a powder, or all the natural, there's honey, there's jams and jellies, there's 100% pure maple syrup made by the Amish themselves. All of those things, don't do them. Don't do them. They raise your blood sugar just as rapidly as eating white table sugar. Even things like fruit juice, like orange juice, a little tiny glass. You know, when you go to a restaurant and you order the orange juice and it's this little 4-ounce thing and they charge $2.50 for it, you know? Did you know that tiny 4-ounce glass of natural orange juice, no sugar added, you can squeeze it from the orange yourself that morning, it has 27 grams of sugar in it. Well, what does that mean? 5 grams of sugar is a teaspoon. Do the math on that. That's 5.5, basically, teaspoons of sugar in that tiny little glass of orange juice. That's like shoveling in your mouth 5.5 teaspoons of table sugar. What's it going to do to your blood sugar? Vroom. And then we go through that whole thing that I was talking to you about before. So the natural sweeteners, I do not recommend them. The sweetest thing you're going to eat is a carrot or a green pepper. If it were me, okay, you may be doing something different, but be at the top of your game. It's so cool. Now, for the former question, her question was, what do I think about dairy products? And it's an excellent question. We have milk, it comes from cows, and then we also have goats and sheep, and I was talking to a guy about camels and other stuff. But anyway, milk has the protein in it called casein. Casein is a very, very difficult molecule of protein to break down. Protein molecules are extremely complex, and they get very complicated, and you just can't break them into their little constituent amino acid parts. Let me explain to you a little bit about amino acids. You have a protein molecule, and then you have smaller pieces called amino acids that make it up, that are combined in different ways. The amino acids are like letters in the alphabet. Like in the English alphabet, how many letters do we have? 26. So we can take 26 letters and we can put them together in many hundreds of thousands of different ways, and you get different words. Well, in the amino acid alphabet, there are now 23. There used to be 19. Then they went to 20, 21, 22. And we keep discovering more and more letters, okay? Well, right now we're at 23 amino acids, 23 letters. And you can take those 23 letters and combine them into hundreds of thousands of different combinations to make a protein molecule, which is your word. Now, for your body to be able to utilize a protein, you eat a protein, the egg, or you eat, let's go back to milk, okay? You eat the protein in the milk called casein. Casein goes into the digestive tract. We have to break the casein down into the letters. The letters will cross into the bloodstream, and then the body will say, I need an A, and I need a B, and I need whatever letters to make this piece of cell for Karen's body, because you were made out of protein. Every cell you have is made out of a protein molecule, many combinations of protein molecules. And so we have to have the letters, and the letters have to be floating around all free. If we cannot break that protein molecules into the little tiny letters, and it crosses into the bloodstream whole, and casein does, then your body can't utilize it, and it will be cleared by the liver because it's an acid, an amino acid, or a protein molecule is made out of amino acids. It's cleared by the liver and it's dumped into your bile. And then if your bile recycles, then that casein ends back up in the bloodstream, and eventually the levels build and build and build until you'll have an allergic reaction to it because you trick the immune system into thinking that it's alive. By the way, the immune system only attacks things that are alive. And milk protein is dead. Milk protein will not beget more milk protein in your bloodstream. And so if you keep having more exposure to casein, these whole protein molecules, and you're recycling your bile, the casein levels build and build into your bloodstream until the immune system says, I'm only supposed to attack things that are alive. But the casein is growing, and I thought it was dead. It's alive. It's multiplying. Attack! And when your immune system attacks a dead foreign protein, we call an allergic reaction. Then you have the runny nose, you have the eyes that are running, you have all the coughing and the wheezing, and you can have hives and all that stuff. It's just you're not throwing away your allergens. So we just have to throw away the allergens. Now let's get back to this casein. We can't break it down. We can't. A human being cannot take a casein molecule and break it into its constituents little letters. It's impossible. There's only one animal that can do it. Want to guess the animal's name? You got it. If we're talking about cows, it's cows. And that is a baby cow, and it's only for the first few weeks of its life. It will make the digestive enzyme to break down. Those digestive enzymes are called protease. And it will make the digestive enzyme to break it down. And then that's great for baby cows, but it's not great for humans. So, is Karen in favor of you drinking milk? No, I'm not. You don't digest it. You're going to have problems in time. Gastrointestinal problems, because we also have allergic reactions in the gastrointestinal tract, creates mucus. Just do a little experiment. Go home and drink your milk. And notice less than 10 minutes you're doing this. If you are a speaker, if you are a singer, you've already heard from your voice teacher or whoever's coaching you, never drink milk before you're going to talk, because you're going to have mucus in your throat. That is an immune system response. We're making histamine, which causes a release of mucus, and that's what's going to happen. So is it okay? What about the rest of the dairy products? What about cheese? What about yogurt? What about cottage cheese? Could you have those because those have the milk protein casein? Yes, you can, because the casein has already been broken down. When you take, let's take yogurt. Yogurt, we add a culture to it. It's called Acidophilus. And that is a bacteria. It's alive. And the bacteria goes in there and says, I'm going to eat up all this casein. And it eats the protein molecule and it breaks it apart. It digests it. I was going to tell you what, I know I won't do it. That's too much information. Just think about it. If it came out of bacteria, you know what it would be called. Okay? It's been digested. Okay, some things are not good to say, because it'll scare people about eating cheese. Cheese has been digested by a bacteria and has been excreted by the bacteria. And then we eat its excretion. Okay? Cheese poop, I'll say it. You're eating cheese poop. I mean, you're eating bacteria poop. That's what cheese is. It's bacteria poop. Okay? But it's been digested for you, do you see? And so it's all broken down. And then you can handle it. So those who have an allergy to milk, you probably will do okay with all the cheese products, unless you are super sensitive, and that means you have really built up a lot of allergens in the bloodstream, and we've got to get the bile removed, and then you'll be able to tolerate it. Okay, I think that was enough. Oh, by the way, I should say something about butter, cream cheese, sour cream. Those don't have casein. Butter, those are all fats. It's 100% fat. So if you are allergic to milk or you don't handle cheese oil, you'll be okay with butter. It doesn't have any protein in it. All right, lady way in the back. And I've got to get back to those back. I forgot about you guys in the back pew. I'll come back. I'm going to get this lady in the back pew. She is chair, actually. I know that. All right.
Hi, Karen. I was just wondering if you could address attention deficit disorder and hyperactivity.
Super good question. Attention deficit disorder and hyperactivity. Do you know that is on the rise? It's an incredible amount of kids and in adults that are suffering with this problem. What do you think it's from after I've told you tonight? Sugar. It's the main thing. Or caffeine. Or not throwing away the recycling adrenaline. It is always too much adrenaline. They have so much adrenaline they don't even know what to do with themselves. Keep in mind, adrenaline makes you go faster and faster and faster and faster. And there's so much information coming in because the neurotransmitter activity, zoom, 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 zoom. And it's like, I can't focus on this and I can't focus on that because that's drawing my attention away. And you're all over the place. And you can be hyper or just distracted easily. You're sitting there and there's a fly on the wall over there and you're watching it. And the teacher's up there going like this and you're watching the fly on the wall. It's because you're easily distracted because of this high amount of production of adrenaline. And so it's get rid of the sugars. I work with tons of kids with ADHD, the attention deficit disorder, hyperactivity disorder. They are so easy to fix. And then we put them on Ritalin and Adderall and Concerta. These are different drugs to calm them down. And also these kids are oppositional. A lot of times parents are very frustrated with them and with your children, and you think it's just because they misbehave and they just need to be spanked and sent to bed without their dinner and all that. I want you to understand what these kids are going through. They're going so fast, they can't calm their mind down. And then they are also going to have a tendency to be a little bit oppositional. and challenge you. And that's because, keep in mind, adrenaline is your fight or flight hormone. And that means when you're making large amounts of adrenaline, you're either going to run, and that depends on your personality, or you're ready to put up your dukes. I'm going to fight you. And if there is no fight, they'll make one. They'll make one, because that's what adrenaline does. All this pent-up energy, nowhere to spend it. I'm calling it energy. It's all this adrenaline pent up and no place to spin it. And you have to sit in this stupid little chair, in this stupid little desk, and you're not allowed to talk or move. Can you imagine if you're just bursting with adrenaline, how it would drive you insane? That's how these kids feel. Yeah. Easy to change them. Okay, I promise you guys in the back row, if you've already forgot your question, you have to think of it again. Oh, it was the other side. Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yes.
You've touched on hyperthyroidism.
Yes.
And I'm a sufferer for hypothyroid. And I was wondering if you could address that.
Yes, hypothyroidism is an excellent question. When you wear out your adrenal glands by continuing to whip them, remember when I told you run out of gas and you just don't make enough anymore? I was only talking about the adrenal glands then. But I need you to know that the endocrine system has more than the adrenal glands in it. I mentioned to you tonight the pituitary and also the pancreas. I briefly mentioned the thyroid gland. The thyroid gland is here in your throat, and it produces for you thyroxine, which maintains your metabolism and maintains your body temperature. And the thyroxine is part of this intricate system called the endocrine system. They are very closely tied, one endocrine gland to the other. They work as a family. And if you tire out one gland, you will tire them all out. Even though you were whipping the adrenals, you wear out the thyroid gland. Let me give you an example. My mother-in-law, she has just moved here from Missouri. She's a very needy person. She's on oxygen 100% of the time. She has COPD. And I've been going over there every day. My husband's over there twice a day, and she's having a lot of problems right now. You know what? I don't have COPD. COPD is a cardiopulmonary disease. And I don't have that. I am not sick at all. But she's part of my family. And so I've been going over there to take care of her. My husband's going over there to take care of her. Do you know what? It's very wearing. And I'm getting worn out and tired. But I'm not the sick one. She's the sick one. But her sickness is having an effect on me. Why? Because we're all part of the same family. Now, if I heard about somebody else's mother-in-law, you know, just anybody raise your hand and say, I have a sick mother-in-law with COPD, I'm sorry about that, and I might say a prayer for it, but you know what? I'm not going to get worried about it. I'm not going to wear myself going out over there, taking meals, going over there to check on her and all the stuff that I do. I'm not going to worry about it because she's not part of my family. But when you're part of the same family, and the endocrine system is a family of glands, then when you wear out the adrenals, you also wore out the ovaries, so now you don't make enough estrogen. You wore out the pineal gland in your brain, which makes melatonin, so you don't sleep well anymore. And you also wore out your thyroid, you don't make enough thyroxine, so you have a tendency to gain weight, you feel cold, and you're tired all the time. And that's because you wore out the entire endocrine system. So the answer is, put the governor on the system, eat your protein. Take away all the things that are stomping on the gas pedal and you'll get better. And you can get better. I'm going to give you a perfect example of someone standing right in front of you. It's me. When I was 17 years old, I had Graves' disease. Graves' disease is hyperthyroidism. Your thyroid is making too much. Why is it making too much? Because I lived on sugar sandwiches. That's all I ate, was sugar sandwiches. Oh, I might have a tater tot now and then. And sugared iced tea. Remember, I was raised in the South, so we always have sugared iced tea. And I mean, the sugar's this deep in your iced tea. And it's black tea, and black tea has caffeine. And so I was really whipping. And so then my thyroid went bonkers and started making so much thyroxine. And so when I was 17 years old, I had my thyroid removed. If you come up and get to me closer, you'll see there's a scar at the base of my neck. They removed one lobe completely. Your thyroid comes as lobes. They removed one lobe completely, and they took all but 10% of the second lobe. I'm left with a 5% of a thyroid gland, just enough to hang my parathyroids on. Parathyroids are other little glands that have to have a little thyroid tissue to operate. And I was told I'd be on Synthroid the rest of my life, which is true. And if you've ever had a thyroidectomy, you'll be told the same thing. And so I lived on Synthroid since I was 17 years old. And then I grew older, and I had my little girl Ruth, and you might have heard the story on WWIB, but I became a nutritionist through all the troubles that happened with Ruth. And after we got Ruth taken care of and there was people calling me, I thought, you know what, I wonder if I can get my thyroid to work at a more efficient rate. I still have some of it. And so I studied myself and my thyroid. And since 1989, I have not taken 1 microgram of Synthroid at all. And my thyroid is perfectly functioning. The last time I had it tested was in August of 2007. I'm completely in the normal range. And I have a whole thyroid panel done. It's the T7, T4, it's uptake. It doesn't matter what it's all the thyroid. I'm completely normal and have been since 1989. And I operate with 1/5 of a gland. So if I can operate with 1/5, or not 1/5, it's actually 5%, 5% of a gland, those who out there are hypothyroid, if we can take care of you by putting in the governors and quit stomping on the gas pedal and putting the stress on the endocrine system, you will easily be able to get off your thyroxine. I deal with hundreds and hundreds of clients that have hypothyroidism. They're all able to get off their Synthroid in time. You cannot drop your med today. Please understand that today. If you walk out here and say, I'm off all meds, I'm quitting, it's like, hold it. Hold it. Nutrition is an effective answer, but you have got to let this body heal. It's going to take time. And then you'll be able to wean off all the meds, and you've got to do the right things. So go easy. Work with your physician. Work with a nutritionist. Work with me or Sarah. Okay, and then we can help you. I think that answers the thyroid question, doesn't it? Yes, yes. Okay, man in the back that's standing. You got to wait for the microphone, because even if you shout, the people over on this end of the room, they won't hear you, and that's not nice.
We have a friend of the family, Karen, that has leukemia. He's 20 years old. His name is Zachary Martin. And have you ever worked with people with cancer? He's been dealing with for 3 years. It's gone away and it's come back, and he's had bone marrow transfusions and all that stuff. What can you say that would be helpful for him?
I need to see him. I've worked with lots of leukemia. I've worked with every type of cancer and rare cancer you can possibly imagine, the ones that are attached to nerves, the fatty cancers, everything you can imagine. And he needs help. Cancer is another whole bugaboo. I wish I could just spend 3 hours on cancer alone. But his immune system has failed him. We have been recycling toxins over and over again. And it's a very complicated answer, but he's going to be eating too many sugars, because we always say, poor kid, let him have all that he can, what he wants. He'll be eating the sugars. Just to let you know, people, sugar feeds cancer. If you want to just throw fuel on a fire, throw sugar onto cancer, it just goes and grows like a weed. And then your endocrine system, just to let you know, every time that you have, just take a bite, 1 bite of a Snickers bar. I need you to understand, you lower your immune system function by 50% for 4 hours. That's what it does. 1 bite of a Snickers bar. And in cancer, it is your immune system, very specifically a cell called a T killer, that will go and it will eat a leukemic cell, or it'll eat whatever type of cancer you have. And when you suppress your immune system, then we are not able to fight the cancer. So we have to build this immune system. We also have to put in things that will actually fight cancer. There's many things that will fight cancer and disrupt the cell. So it's a good question boy, that's a $1 question with a $100 answer, so I'm just going to leave it at that tonight. So I would like to see him if he would be willing to change his tie. Yes, sir, right in front. Fellow MI officer, I just want to thank him for serving in the United States Army. Yes, thank you. Now, he's coming with the, yeah. Did I embarrass you? I'm sorry. No. Oh, good. He came up to me in between the break. I didn't know him before tonight. So
I'm a dangerous person to give a mic. But the question is, for all these people in the room, including my wife, who is a real sugar addict,
is that you?
What do
you feel
suggest?
embarrassed now? I'm sorry. Okay. I'm just having fun. Okay, what was the question?
What can you suggest as a replacement for all the sugar? I mean, candy is hidden everywhere. I mean, you can't.
You mean she is under the bed at night with a bag of Oreos and the...
Not quite that.
Okay, she just said I would rather have a candy bar than a steak. Sugar's addictive. That's the problem. It's very, very addictive. There is no substitute. It isn't like, oh, well, now we can have the artificial sweetener, or we can have the honey sweetened chocolate chip cookies, or we can have the Nutri-Sweet sweetened whatever, the stevia sweetened. There isn't an alternative. It's just having a mental understanding that it's addictive. And I want you to know too, I know a police officer, and they do these dare things, or like drug seminars to kids and stuff. And he was telling me how they tell the kids that sugar is as addictive as cocaine. It is. It is. If you don't believe me, quit tonight. In fact, not when you get home tonight, now. So when you get home tonight, that cake or cookie or whatever that's sitting on the kitchen counter, don't eat it. And then you're going to know how addictive it is, because it's calling your name, and you want it. You want it. Yes. If you can draw a line in the sand, and you can. Sometimes people would prefer to wean, but I will tell you, weaning from sugar is difficult, because once you eat it, you want more of it. It's like an alcoholic. You know, you have one drink, so you're right back into the same pattern again. It's very addictive. And I call it opening up Pandora's box. I ask my clients, just stop. Stop. And just be accountable to somebody somehow. Just do this. And I give them a lot of ideas too, but when you open up Pandora's box, it's just the corner of a piece of cheesecake, just the slightest bit. Then you've opened up Pandora's box, and for my clients that are sitting out here, they'll know it's very hard to get the lid back on, because I help them so much time. It's very hard to get the lid back on, and you have to. It's a decision of the will. I decided years ago that I would not eat any sweets at all, and I have not. It was 9 years ago that I made that decision. I was a nutritionist all that time. I've been a nutritionist for almost 19 years now, but I was very convicted by God, by how sugar was affecting me, because I was leading a worship at a retreat at Arrowhead Bible Camp. And I remember her name, you guys in my church know, her name is Jamie, and she thought she'd do me a favor. And she knew I loved powdered sugar donut holes. And so I was leading the worship at this women's camp. And this was Saturday nights, the big worship session. These are worship sessions that last for 45 minutes to an hour long. You got to be on your toes. You got to know your key changes. You got to be right there. You can't mess anything up. And she went all the way back to Eau Claire. This campus in New Auburn. And she went all the way back to Eau Claire during the day and brought me this big Sam-sized bucket of powdered sugar donut holes. I said, no, Jamie, I can't eat them, because I will react. I will have a sugar spike, and I will drop down. I will not even be able to think, because I know that's what happens when you are a race car. And so, but there's 15 ladies from our church there that night, and they're saying, oh, Carrie, she went all the way back to Eau Claire, to get you these donuts, and you're saying no. It's like, okay, I'll eat when I eat 6. This was in the middle of the afternoon. Don't eat sugar in the middle of the afternoon. It's a bad time. I know all this. I'm a nutritionist. This is 9 years ago. I've been doing this. I know this. Anyway, I ate the powdered sugar donuts by 6 o'clock. When I have to start the worship, I was worthless. I couldn't even, if you had asked me my address, I don't even think. And I knew that would happen. I knew I would crash. I went to the camp director, Gary Ashby, and said, Gary, give me some protein. Let me get into the refrigerator and find some meat or something. I was stuffing myself with protein, trying to counteract, put a governor on the system. But the problem was, I already ran way out of control. I was already hitting the wall. And so I led worship that night. I remember sitting at the piano. I'm going to play In the Garden. And I remember saying, dear God, what are these black little dots on this white paper? And what am I going to do with them? It was Judy Steinpass is out here tonight. You were there with me that weekend, Judy. And she doesn't even know this story. And she was the accompanist, and that was the one song I was going to play. It was In the Garden. And I remember sitting there, and the rest of it I was leading the worship. And I don't even know how I got through the session. And I remember sitting down, and there were a couple ladies that I sat down next to. They were giggling. I said, what's so funny? Because, speaker has to go up and speak then. I was just a worship leader. And they said, you were so funny. You acted like you were drunk up there. And I thought, oh, great. Here I am, supposed to be leading people, and singing songs to God, and I'm the comedy routine, And I made God a promise that very night, I will never eat sugar again. And that was 9 years ago. And there's sugar and bread. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about desserts and cakes and cookies. I haven't had a crumb since that day, because I have too much to accomplish. God has gifted me. And I'm not going to toss that away on a stupid powdered sugar donut hole. Thank you. This man right here. So I don't know. Oh, there's Kate right there. Where?
How will it impact sleep apnea?
Oh, sleep apnea is very interesting. Sleep apnea, most of the people that have sleep apnea have a tendency, just not have a tendency, they are overweight. And so it becomes an obstructive disorder. We just have too much weight here. And so there's this little flap that goes from the esophagus to the trachea. These are a breathing tube and food tube. And that flap there's too much weight on it, so it's not easily open. So there, you have to get to this point where you're almost so gasping for air, you have to go, and when you do that, then that flap blows, and so then you can get the air in. Some people have the sleep apnea from GERD. GERD, remember, is gastroesophageal reflux disease. And that causes the burning bile that's regurgitated up here. It causes irritation in the esophagus and right at the esophageal opening and at that epiglottis, and it can also get just the smallest bit. If it touches the trach, the trachea is his breathing tube, then you will have mucus. And then this mucus, I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to be abrupt and say what it is. It's snot, okay? And all of you know snot has this tendency to be sticky. And it will stick this flap, and then you're not going to breathe unless you have this great effort of to be able to move that flap. And so if we can eat the beans, it's the most important thing that you can do. And losing weight. And I didn't even get into weight loss. That is another 3-hour-long lecture. Okay, but guys, eat beans. Know that. Beans throw out fat. Remember, fat to triglycerides are what cause adipose tissue. That's one thing. Just eat beans. It's one way to lose weight. Get off sugar is another. Okay, yes. Now then. Yes, ma'am, I know you have been so persistent. This lady, well, yeah, that's waving and going like this. Yes, standing. Yes.
My question is, if I start eating beans 3 times a day today, and you know I've been eating them for a really long time, but
Yeah, this happened. Should I tell me or my client?
yeah. If I started eating them today, how long would it take for my body to clean out the bile completely, or does it never really completely get cleaned out?
Diane, excellent question. Okay, when you are always making hormones, always making things to throw away. But if we didn't have anything new added to the bile, all we had was old stuff, not new, it is 6 to 10 weeks of eating legumes, beans, a half a cup, 6 times a day. Remember when I told you about the lipomas, or these little landfills where we just store fat, it's a little knob on your head or on your back or whatever it is, on your wrist, these little fatty things. Those landfills, we're going to go in there and clean it out. But we are looking at a 5-acre, this is comparison, a 5-acre landfill, and you got a wheelbarrow. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to get a wheelbarrow out. And that's each serving of beans. So it's 6 times a day we throw out a wheelbarrow, but we got a 5-acre landfill that's heaped up tall. So it does work. People with gallstones, I didn't even touch on that really. I skizzed over it pretty fast. Remember I said some of the bile goes through the gallbladder? Actually, the vast majority is concentrated 10 times the strength, which it is. If your bile is extremely acidic and you've been recycling it over and over and you keep concentrating it down, distill it down, it rolls into these little balls that we call gallstones. Or it gets so thick that it's what we call biliary sludge. It's bile, but it's just thick as molasses. And it gets stuck in the little tube that's leading down. It's another biliary duct that leads down into the duodenum, and we have gallbladder disease. Gallbladder disease is so easy to fix. I had a lady at the Chippewa Valley Bible Church that had gallstones really badly, and she called me. She's in pain, because gallstones can be very painful, by the way, when you're trying to pass them. And she says, my doctor is recommending surgery in 3 days, and I don't want to do the surgery, and I'm in pain. And I said, well, we can dissolve the stones if you want to. And so she said, I want to. And so I began to feed her the beans 6 times a day. I say I feed her, she's feeding herself. Open up. So, anyway, her doctor was very upset that she'd canceled her surgery, because he says there's nothing that nutrition can do to rectify a gallbladder disease. That's not true. It's just because they don't know. They're smart people, they just don't know. They're in a medical model and they're not looking at an alternative. Anyway, so she said in 6 to 10 weeks that those stones would be gone. Now we can do an ultrasound. You can see stones on an ultrasound. So she had the ultrasound done. That's why they're recommending the removal of her gallbladder. By the way, she was out of pain in 12 hours. And she went ahead and she did the beans. The doctor was very upset. I will personally do your ultrasound in 6 weeks. And I will show you the stones are still there. So 6 weeks later, she went in for ultrasound. There were no stones. No stones at all. And so it's very effective. It's the 6 to 10 weeks to get rid of the old stuff. But there are some factors If you were dumping in a lot of NutraSweet, these are things that are cleared by the liver, or you are a high hormonal producer, remember the hormones are cleared by the liver, you will have to eat beans on a more regular basis. You're producing a lot of stuff that it has to clear. Do you see? So then it could take longer. So it depends. If you're one of these people that are, the princess and the pea, you got to put beans on your diet. You just got to, because you're just making huge amounts of hormones that have to be cleared. Okay, I'm going over to this side of the room. Okay, this lady's waving. She looks like she really got to be talked to. Wait a minute. Wait, is this your second question? Oh, okay. If it was, I'd say, no, you can't do it. Okay, no. Is somebody close? Oh, it's next door. I was closest in the vicinity.
There's 3 items. Number 1, the beans. Are you recommending canned beans or cooking your own beans?
Good question. You may buy them right off the shelf, canned, or you can cook them from the dry. And the only requirement I ask, if you buy the sugary ones like the Bush's baked beans, put them in a colander and run them under water. They get foamy because don't worry, it's not the bean, it's the sauce that they're in. Until it stops foaming, you've got every bit of that sugary sauce off, then you can eat them. So any of the canned beans are fine. Other beans like the kidney beans and the black beans and there's garbanzo beans. They're in a brine solution. Brine means salt solution. And you can have those unless we're trying to watch salt and water retention, then rinse them. If you want to be safe, just rinse all your beans that you buy in cans. Or you can cook them from the dry. Either way. You cannot take the soluble fiber out of a bean. If you take the soluble fiber out of a bean, there's nothing left but that little tiny skin. Have you ever had a kid? Lisa wanted me obsessive compulsive. By the way, that's an adrenaline problem too, obsessive compulsive. And they take the little skin off of a bean. And then they eat the inside. Well, the inside is soluble fiber. So, okay, now.
Okay, I have 2 more.
Oh, wait a minute. That's triple dipping.
Triple dipping. Well, they're
all right, I'll
kind
let it go.
of connected. The salt, you just said about the salt. And my question is, what kind of salt do you recommend? And do you recommend salt?
Salt is not a problem. People, we have to have salt.
Yes.
I didn't even talk to you about, I talked to you about neuroconduction and about the synaptical gap, but we have to travel, this voltages, these electricity message, or the electrical messages have to travel along the neural fiber. Do you know how electricity travels? It's through the rapid exchange of ions, and I won't get into what an ion is, but they're charged particles. And so the rapid exchange of ions is what we carry electricity with. That is sodium and potassium. If you don't have sodium, you're not thinking. You will die without salt. Yes. You will die without salt. So we can eat too much salt, but salt is not a major problem as much as we make it out to be in our society. We have other problems. Salt is, and some people I do limit them on salt, but most people we can get away with it. I mean, if you have cardiopulmonary disease, and I'll watch it, or different things like big swollen ankles or something like that. But generally, salt is fine. And what kind of salt? Salt is salt is salt. Study chemistry. It is sodium chloride. It is sodium chloride. And whether you get sea salt, and you say, well, sea salt is natural and it's better for you, it has some intrinsic factors. Salt is salt. You're going to have the intrinsic factors and maybe some other particles or minerals in there, but your minerals, by the way, do you know what one of the richest sources of minerals are? Beans. They're loaded with minerals. So you can either eat the sea salt, that's fine, but if you buy regular old table salt, Morton's, whatever, it is sodium chloride. It is exactly what it is. Okay, now she said the third part, and I'm letting her get away with it because she said, were they related? Do you think they were really related? Their questions. Do you think I should let her ask the third one? Okay, they're very generous. All right.
I would just like to make a comment on the Mortons.
Yes.
If you look at the label and you see what's in those ingredients, and their processing, I think that you would be wise to choose the Celtic salt or the real salt.
I am so glad you said that, because I want to tell you about dust on the table. Because you're talking about the silicone and different things to make it free-flowing. So salt sticks together, by the way. If it gets damp, salt sticks together. And so what we're worried about is all the little additives. I want to say something about additives now. All the little things that you find, it is dust on the table. It is dust on the table. What is occurring is you guys are out there, you have diabetes, you have depression, you have anxiety, you have arthritis, you can barely get out of bed in the morning. You got some serious problems. You got leukemia, a 20-year-old kid with leukemia. You got all these serious health problems. The walls of your house are falling down. You live in this body, and this is your house, and all the walls are falling down around you. And so you're going to try to repair the walls, and while you're rushing over to start putting in the 2x4s and the 2x6s and all those pieces that you need to build walls with, you notice as you rush over to the walls, you pass by the living room table and you go, oh, there's dust on the living room table. And you stop and you dust the table. That is the additives in your Morton salt. You dust and you stop, you stop and you dust the table. And you know what happens while you're busy dusting the table? Walls fall down. Walls fall down. You're so busy concentrating on the organic versus inorganic issue. You are so busy focused on whether or not this is an organic isolate or if this is a natural. And you miss the boat. You're stuffing yourself with sugar and caffeine. You're not getting your protein. You're not getting any soluble fiber. The walls of your house are falling right down. Your liver can easily filter out those things, just like this. People ask me questions about, Karen, you recommend fish. It has mercury. Yeah, so do the amalgam fillings in your teeth. In fact, the amalgam fillings, the average American has 8 amalgam fillings in their teeth. Do you know that you are putting off almost 100 micrograms of mercury a day from those fillings? Because of the weak battery action, this acidic bile that comes up in our saliva, and how it causes leaching out of that mercury, goes straight into your bloodstream. Mercury is a heavy metal. It'll cause damage. Do you know if you ate fish 6 times a day, the most heavily laden, nasty, tuna, awful stuff that you could find, you'll get 2 micrograms a day. And those 2 micrograms, did you know your liver, without assistance, without this recycling of the bile, will clear 60 micrograms a day without even thinking? Your liver clears mercury just like this. And if you happen to add a sulfide in there, which is garlic, leeks, or onions, you will clear every bit of mercury that ever enters your body besides lead and every other heavy metal. And just eat your beans so we throw the bile out so it doesn't recycle. It is that simple. We get so wrapped around the axle about these things. It's like, oh, just study a little more. And it's because you don't know. You're not chemistry majors. You don't, and even the chemistry majors don't know. I should tell you about a story about a PhD in chemistry that I had as a client. I still have him. He's doing really well. Okay, I won't go there. Now, no more questions from you. No.
The vinegar.
No. Now take the microphone from her.
Wait, you're talking about fermentation. I want to know about vinegar, how you feel about that. And I will turn over the microphone.
Okay, take the microphone from that woman. Unfair advantage. And you know, I'm just teasing you. No, I'm just teasing you. I'm really a nice person at heart. Okay, thank you. Okay, see, now the lady in the blue, you can hand her the microphone while I answer the fermentation question. All right, acids. All this stuff about, okay, we got to drink the apple cider vinegar. People, drink your vinegar, take it down. Do you know that it's at 5% acidity already? Did you know that your stomach acid is very acidic too? It runs a little bit higher than that. And when you add acid to acid, I'm telling you, you don't make alkaline. You don't. It doesn't happen that way. And so we're saying, I have more digestive power because I have more acid. No. You have more acid, it's going to cause more problems. We do make digestive enzymes in the pancreas. We also make digestive enzymes in the stomach. We also make some digestive, well, no, not much of them, duodenum. It's like, it's the wrong answer. The right answer are soluble fiber. All these people are worried about this pH balance. Got to watch my time. People are starting to move.
Is there any benefit at all to eating dark chocolate?
Is there any benefit?
Yes, they say it's better for you than milk chocolate, but is it a bad thing to eat?
It is, because it's full of caffeine and you have to put sugar in it to be able to get it down because it's so bitter. The reason people say that dark chocolate, while you're hearing it's good, it has a certain phenol in it. It's a chemical compound that prevents cancer. Yes, did you know the same phenol is found in poison ivy? The exact same one. Don't anybody go drink poison ivy tea. It'll be a mistake, all right? That same phenol is also found in legumes. We are looking and we say, well, look, it's high there, but it's also in many of our sources. Okay, now guys, the Florian Gordon's going to get mad at me. WWIB is going to say something nasty to me unless I'll let you go. So I'm glad you're here tonight. It's 9:30, and if you have any more questions, I'll be up here for a while. There's books, and I don't know if they took the food away, but hang around, talk, or whatever. Thank you. God bless you all.